So we're going to look at 3 approaches to multiplying without a calculator that are often taught in schools. We're going to look at the traditional method, the grid method, and the Gelosia method. For each approach, we will be using the same 2 calculations. Essentially, it's down to you to choose which approach you prefer. But whichever approach you use, more than likely you will be required to do a calculation like this in a non-calculator paper. You do need to be comfortable with multiplying by multiples of 10. I have done a video on this, and the link is in the description below. So we'll begin with the traditional method, the method that I learned when I was at school. Interestingly enough, it is a method that some students do struggle with. The 2 calculations we're going to be looking at are 32 multiplied by 24 and 124 multiplied by 53. We'll do 32 multiplied by 24. We set the calculation out like this. So we line up the digits, and we're going to now do 2 calculations. Think of 24 as 20 add 4. So we're breaking the 24 up. The first calculation we're going to do is 32 multiplied by 20, and then we're going to do 32 multiplied by 4. You can do it the other way around if you wanted to. You could do the 32 multiplied by 4 first of all. It doesn't matter, as the 2 calculations are going to produce the same answers. 32 multiplied by 20. Again, we can actually break this problem down to 32 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 10. Because we're multiplying whole numbers by 10, we're going to end up with a naught on the end. If I write down the naught to allow for the multiplying by 10, we're left with 32 multiplied by 2. So that's what we're going to do now. How I do that is I will start off with the units column first of all, where we have 2, and I'm going to multiply that 2 by 2. So 2 multiplied by 2 is equal to 4. And we write that down in the first available column, which happens to be the tens. I now do 3 multiplied by 2, which is equal to 6. And that goes in the hundreds column. So 32 multiplied by 20 is equal to 640. We now do 32 multiplied by 4. Again, we start with the units column. So we have 2 multiplied by 4. Well, 2 multiplied by 4 is equal to 8. And then we do 3 multiplied by 4. Remember, this is 3 tens. 3 multiplied by 4 is equal to 12. And we write that down in the next available columns. So 32 multiplied by 4 is equal to 128. We now add 640 to 128, and we end up with the answer 768. Now let's do 142 multiplied by 53. The approach is exactly the same. We just happen to be multiplying a 3-digit number this time. The number that we're going to be doing the multiplying with, which is 53, think of that as 50 add 3. And we're now going to do 2 calculations. 142 multiplied by 50 and 142 multiplied by 3. So let's do the 142 multiplied by 50. 50 is a multiple of 10, and we're multiplying a whole number, so the answer is going to end in a naught to allow for that multiple of 10. So we write the naught down in the units column. We're now left with 142 multiplied by 5. So we start with the units. So 2 multiplied by 5 is equal to 10. I write a naught down in the tens column, and we're going to carry the 1 into the hundreds column. 4 multiplied by 5 is equal to 20, but we have that 1 there, so we're going to have 21. So I now write the 1 down in the hundreds column, and I carry the 2 into the thousand column. We now have 1 multiplied by 5 is equal to 5, and we had those 2 there, which is 2,000, so we end up with 7,000. So 142 multiplied by 50 is equal to 7,100. We now do the 142 multiplied by 3. So we start with the units. 2 multiplied by 3 is equal to 6. 4 multiplied by 3, well, 4 multiplied by 3 is equal to 12. We write the 2 down in the tens column and we carry the 1 over into the hundreds column. 1 multiplied by 3 is equal to 3, and we've got the 1 here in the hundreds column, so we end up with 4. So 142 multiplied by 3 is 426. We now add 7,100 and 426, and we get the answer 7,526. Although it's a nice, neat method, I can see why some students have a problem in understanding what's going on. It's quite an involved process. If you're comfortable with it, I think the traditional method is brilliant, but I can see why others will choose a different method, which is why schools adopted the next two methods in tackling multiplication. Now let's do the grid method. Again, we're going to do the same calculations. I'll leave the answers up as well because we now know what the answers are. 32 multiplied by 24. We have a 2-digit number multiplied by a 2-digit number. So we're going to make a 2 by 2 grid. We're now going to break the two numbers up like so. 32 is 30 add 2. So we write the 30 here and we'll write the 2 here. 24 is 20 add 4. So we'll write the 20 here and the 4 here. You can, if you want to, have written them on the other side of the grid. We're now going to fill in the grid by doing 4 multiplications. Starting with the top left-hand grid, we can see that the two numbers that are associated with that grid are 30 and 20. Well, 30 multiplied by 20 is equal to 600. Remember that for this kind of calculation, it's 2 multiplied by 3, which is equal to 6, and then we add the two noughts. I'm now going to do the top right-hand grid. 20 multiplied by 2, or 2 multiplied by 20, which is equal to 40. The bottom left-hand grid is 30 multiplied by 4, which is equal to 120. And then we've got 4 multiplied by 2, which is equal to 8. We now add up all the calculations that are in the grid. The 600, the 40, the 120, and the 8. And that comes to 768. Now let's do 142 multiplied by 53. We have a 3-digit number multiplied by a 2-digit number. So we're going to do a 3 by 2 grid. And along the top, of course, this time we have to put the 3-digit number, which breaks down into 100, 40, and 2. And down the side, we put down the 50 and the 3 to represent 53. We're now going to fill out the grid, starting with the top left-hand grid. 100 multiplied by 50, well, that's 1 multiplied by 5, add 3 noughts is 5,000. 40 multiplied by 50, again, well, that's 4 multiplied by 5 is equal to 20. Add 2 noughts this time is going to give you 2,000. 15 multiplied by 2 is equal to 100. Now let's go along the bottom row. We have got 100 multiplied by 3 is 300. 40 multiplied by 3 is equal to 120. And finally, we've got 3 multiplied by 2 is equal to 6. We'll add up the grid. So that's 5,000, add 2,000, add 100, add 300, add 120, add 6. And we get the answer 7,526. The beauty of the grid method is that the way the calculation is broken up is very clear. I also happen to think the calculations are a lot easier to manage. Now let's deal with the last method, which is the Gelosia method. Again, this method involves a grid. There's also diagonals across each of the boxes. So we've got 32 multiplied by 24. And again, we've got a 2 by 2 grid. So along the top edge, I'm going to write 32 like so. And down the right-hand side, and it has to be the right-hand side, I'm going to write the 24. We now fill in the grid doing multiplications, starting with the top left-hand box. And this is going to be 3 multiplied by 2, which we know is equal to 6. Notice how I write the 6 down. The answer that we're going to get in any of these calculations is going to be a 1-digit or a 2-digit answer. Because 3 multiplied by 2 is 6, i.e. a 1-digit answer, we're going to put a 0 in this triangle here, and we put a 6 in this triangle here. Hopefully this will make sense if I now do the bottom left hand of the grid, this box here, which is 3 multiplied by 4. Now 3 multiplied by 4 is 12, it's a 2-digit number. We put the 1 here and the 2 here. Let's complete the rest of the grid. So that's 2 multiplied by 2, which is equal to 4. So I write down 0, 4. And we've got 2 multiplied by 4, which is equal to 8. So we write down 0, 8. What we now do is we add along the diagonals, as shown by these arrows. And we start with the diagonal in the bottom right-hand side of the grid. And this is just 8. We write that 8 outside the grid in line with the diagonal. We now move along to the next diagonal. And here we have 2 add 0 add 4, which is equal to 6. Again, write the 6 in line with the diagonal that we've just added up. We move along to the next diagonal, which is 1 add 6 add 0, which is equal to 7. We write the 7 down here. And in the last diagonal, it's 0. You might have noticed that the digits that we have written outside the box is our answer, 768, if we read it this way, as shown with the blue line. Let's do 142 multiplied by 53. So we have our 3 by 2 grid with the diagonals. So along the top we write 142 like so, and down the side we write down 53. I'm going to start in the top left-hand corner again. 1 multiplied by 5 is equal to 5, so I write down 0, 5. 4 multiplied by 5 is equal to 20. So we write 20 like this. We write 2 in this part of the grid this time and 0 here. 2 multiplied by 5 is equal to 10. So we write the 10 down. Now we work along the bottom of the grids, starting with 1 multiplied by 3 is equal to 3. Then 4 multiplied by 3 is equal to 12. Write the 12 down. And then finally we finish off with 2 multiplied by 3 is equal to 6. We now add along the diagonals, starting with the diagonal in the bottom right-hand corner. And that diagonal is 6, so we write the 6 outside the grid in line with the diagonal. We move along to the next diagonal, which is 2 add 0, which is equal to 2. Write the 2 outside the grid in line with the diagonal. We now move on to the next diagonal, which is 3, add 1, add 0, add 1, which is equal to 5. Write the 5 down. The next diagonal is 0, add 5, add 2, which is equal to 7. And of course, we've got nothing in the final diagonal. And again, if you read the digits following the blue line, we end up with the answer 7,526. So that's the Gelosia method. It appears to be a little bit like a combination of the traditional method and the grid method. The beauty of this method is that the multiplications that you are doing are even simpler than the multiplications you're doing in the grid method. But those are the three approaches that are often taught in schools today. But whichever approach you use, more than likely you will be required to do a calculation like this in a non-calculator paper. Whichever you choose, the best approach will be to practice and see which one works for you. As much as I like the grid method and the Gelosia method, I still use the traditional method because that's what I've been using for the last 40 plus years. But you find what's best for you. I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.